Yeah, g'day YouTubers, Spanner Man again here with another video. Hope you enjoyed the video today. Please subscribe to the channel. Any comments, thumbs up. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. G'day YouTubers, Spanner Man again here with another video. Today we're going to briefly talk about file guides. For those people out there where maybe you believe that your hand filing has dropped off, it's not as good as what it should be. Is there a way of improving it? Some people believe that they need to go to a grinder if they can't hand file. You should always learn to hand file, and you should always try and learn the mistakes that you're doing, because as humans we always make mistakes, and it's very, very easy to make a mistake with a file. Two mistakes that are generally made out of there is the people hold the file at the wrong angle. So they don't get it. 30 degrees is the most common. The other thing could be up or down. So that's another mistake. And the other file mistake that people make is not having the file up enough, or they've got the file too deep down into the gullet. This is a 3/8 chain. It uses a 5.2 millimeter file. So 25% of that diameter should stick above the tooth, which is just a fraction over a millimeter, should always be above the tooth when filing. How do you know when you're 25% above the tooth? Answer is that you don't know. You've got to guess it, and you've got to give it your best guess. And in some situations, some people just aren't very good at guessing that. I'm not the world's best expert at guessing that either. So in that situation, you can get yourself a file holder. And that file holder has presets on it, because it's stamped in a machine so that the file sits approximately just a fraction over a millimeter up, raised into this holder. So if it's 5.2 millimeters in depth, it's just a fraction, 4 millimeters roughly of the file sits here, so that you're filing 4 millimeters below the tooth, and the other 1.1 or something millimeters is above the tooth. So you're getting your 25%. The other thing that you've got on these is you've got 30-degree markings left and right. So that's the other thing that you get on there, the file markings, 10 degrees at this end, 30 degrees there, and 30 degrees there, and 10 degrees at that end. Some of the aftermarket ones have 25 degrees on them. If you don't have 25 degrees on here, which you don't, and you may want to file at 25 degrees, I would recommend that you get a protractor, put it on here, and mark with a permanent texture or something there, and you can put your 25 degrees on there. If you believe that that still doesn't help you, you can always get yourself this little type of cage. It's also made by Stihl, that you place this over your chain at the correct angle, and you put this file guide in here. So this allows you to file at the correct angle without making mistakes. They do come in aftermarket ones, and you'll find out that you have, this one's got 25 degrees on it. So I was just talking about the Stihl one doesn't, but this one actually does have 25 degree markings on it, as well as 30 degree here and 35 there. Unfortunately, I can't focus on that. So after you've used one of these, and if your filing's dropped off, hopefully this will bring it back into check. If that fails, you need to probably use a electric grinder, and the electric grinder doesn't make mistakes. It's only the human error that people make. You can make mistakes on that. The biggest mistake that you make on an electric grinder is bringing this handle down too fast, too quick. You can overheat the metal, and in some cases people blew the metal, and that tempers the steel, and that's not a good idea. So people make mistakes using files, holding them at the wrong angle, up, down, all over the place. So just bear in mind that this has markings on it. Most chains are roughly 30 degrees. There's some Oregon ones that recommend 25 degrees. Archer chains, there's all different manufacturers, but as I said, worst case scenario, put yourself You could even cut some thin bits of masking tape, thin strips, and put them at 25-degree angles. There's various different ways that you could mark this, whether it's a permanent marker or whatever, but you can use a permanent marker and put your own angles on it. Look, I hope that helps. It's just a bit of a brief introduction about using those. The only thing that I would say after that is that if your filing improves and it gets real good and you can sharpen and they're razor sharp, there's no point having a razor sharp chain unless you've checked it with a progressive depth gauge. You really want something like this. These are the best progressive depth gauges out there on the market. They're made by Stihl. They are specific for each chain. There's 5 in the series. You've got FL1 to FL5. So FL1 is for 1/4 inch chain, FL2 is for 3/8 lobe profile, FL3 is for 0.325, FL4 is for 3/8 standard, and FL5 is for 404 chain. Do yourself a favour, go down to your local Stihl dealer, buy yourself one of these FL gauges. You'll thank me for it, because what they'll do, they are a progressive depth gauge and they'll take off more than the standard depth gauge. So why is that important? Because when your tooth starts hitting timber, it has this rocking motion as it travels along. And it's this rocking motion that gets more violent or more sensitive when the tooth wears down. This is the pivot point here where the rivet is. When the tooth starts to wear down in this point here, this gets very, very sensitive and it kicks back very, very easily. And when it kicks back, it really needs to take more of a bite as the chain wears down the tooth. So as that tooth wears down, you really need to be taking more than 0.65 of a millimetre off. When you see this type of gauge here, and I'm sure a lot of people would know what that is, this is a standard type depth gauge that Stihl will sell you. It's called a constant depth gauge. It was invented by Joseph Burford Cox from Portland in Oregon. And yeah, everyone knows Oregon Tool Company makes Oregon chain. So yeah, you're talking nearly 70 years ago that this was invented. It's been superseded by the progressive depth gauge. Everyone should be using progressive depth gauges these days. It really makes a big difference when your tooth gets halfway worn down. You should be swapping over to that, or just getting rid of that flat gauge and using the progressive depth gauge by Stihl. Husqvarna also make their progressive depth gauge. West Coast Saws in America make their version. The original person that invented the progressive depth gauge was a man also that came from America called Ray Carlton in 1965 or something, I think it was. Put a worldwide patent on that, and today people just copy that. West Coast Saws in America, they have their version. His version, Ray Carlton's version, was called Philo Plate. There's still a few of them kicking around. The West Coast Saw one is probably the closest, best copy of that. Still realised in 2017 that there was a need for the progressive depth gauge, and after a lot of people complained, why don't you make one, why don't you make one, in 2017 Stihl in their wisdom decided that they would make the progressive depth gauge, and at 2017 they released it. So do yourself a favour, get yourself one of these, you'll thank me for it. Look, thanks for watching. Let's hope if your filing drops off and you get yourself one of those file guides, it can help. Yes, I've also got the Stihl 2-in-1. The only reason that I dislike that is that it's got its own file for the depth gauges, and as I said, it's only going to file 0.65 of a millimetre even in that Stihl 201. It's not a progressive file system by any stretch of the imagination. So it lacks that. While it's easy to use and it does a great job, it lacks the progressive part of the depth gauge, which is really critical to cutting timber. Look, thanks for watching. Give us a thumbs up. Bye for now.